see everyone today. Happy April. I cannot believe that we are in our first lunch meeting of April, which follows a very fun fundraising event last week on April Fool's Day. Part of our program, Carter Sales, will provide an update on how it all went. I will tell you it was fun. So can't wait for Carter to share that, and we'll have some information in the meeting recap too. The meeting recap will also include a link to the 2021 Rotary District Conference. There are learning sessions which are virtual. Those will be on May 6th and 7th. There's an in-person dinner and reception the evening of May 7th with limited seating and reservations required, all in compliance with COVID regulations. There are several Rotarians, including myself, that are attending all or part of the session. So take a look and join us if you can. The district conference will also include or conclude, I guess, with a day of service on Saturday, May 8th. Our club is working on some offerings there, and we're also partnering with other clubs in our district and in our area for opportunities there. So with that, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Turning the program over to Chuck Turner. Chuck is a former Denver Rotary Club Foundation president. He's also retired executive director of the Denver and Colorado Bar Association, and Chuck will be giving our inspirational moment. And Chuck, you'll need to take yourself off mute.
It's more of reflection as well as inspiration. I think I noticed today on the calendar that it was Holocaust Remembrance Day. And so I thought I'd read part of a proclamation that I saw to honor this day. It's a couple of paragraphs, but I think it is perhaps very, very meaningful in these times when there is so much suffering going on in the world. We honor the memories of precious lives lost, contemplate the incomprehensible wound to our humanity, mourn for the communities broken and scattered, and embrace those who survived the Holocaust, some of whom are still with us today, continuing to embody extraordinary resilience after all these years. Having borne witness to the depths of evil, these survivors remind us of the vital refrain, never again. The history of the Holocaust is forever seared into the history of humankind, and it is the shared responsibility of all people to ensure that the horrors of the Shoah can never be erased from our collective memory. Holocaust survivors and their descendants, and each child, grandchild, and great-grandchild of those who lost their lives are living proof that love and hope will always triumph over murder and destruction. Every child and grandchild of a survivor is a testament to the resilience and a living rebuke to those who sought to extinguish the future of the Jewish people and others who were targeted. Yom HaShoah reminds us not only of the Jewish victims of the Holocaust, but also reinforces our ongoing duty to counter all forms of dehumanizing bigotry directed against the LGBTQ and disability and other marginalized communities. While hate may never be permanently defeated, it must always be confronted and condemned. When we recognize the fundamental human dignity of all people, we help to build a more just and peaceful world. In the memory of all those who were lost, in honor of all those who survived, we must continue to work towards a better, freer, and more just future for all humankind. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck, for that reflection. Next is Troy Szymanski with our club secretary's report. Troy is our club secretary. He's also partner and fund manager for Outpost Fund. Troy.
All right, thank you very much, President Debbie. I want to start off by welcoming some of the guests that we have. I want to thank Brandon Lloyd for joining us. He's a guest of Mike Deneen, as well as assorted other guests and potential new members that I don't have the names of right in front of me. As people come and go in Zoom, it kind of gets tough to follow along with that. So even though I'm not saying your name, thank you for coming and joining us today. Some birthdays, even though we didn't have even though we didn't have a meeting last week, we want to have some wish a happy birthday to some people who had birthdays last week. So if you'll all join me in wishing a nice Denver Rotary happy birthday to RJ, Don, and Tom. That'll be both last week and today. So happy birthday to you guys from Denver Rotary. Just some brief announcements. Our next virtual happy hour will be next week, so Wednesday, April 14th at 5:30 p.m. The Zoom link will be provided in our Tuesday meeting emails. Don't forget to register for the Cherry Creek Trail cleanup on Saturday, April 17th at 9 a.m. Please consider participating to help keep this popular trail clean, safe, and enjoyable for all. Registration is available in our meeting recap email to follow this meeting's conclusion. And then in our family of Rotary, it is with a heavy heart to tell you that longtime Rotarian Henry Strauss passed away this morning at 93 years old. Henry was a member for 32 years, a Paul Harris Fellow +6, a DRCF Diamond Fellow, and a former member of our World Community Service Committee. Please keep Henry's wife, Joan, and their family in your thoughts and prayers during this difficult time. Lauren will send out an email with more information later today. That is all from me, President Debbie. Back to you.
Thank you, Troy. Next is Carter Sales to give us a preliminary results and recap of the April Fool's Untalent Show fundraiser. Carter is our current Denver Rotary Club Foundation president. He is broker principal of Carter Sales Commercial Real Estate Services. Carter, as they say, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. And I too have a heavy heart. Henry was a very good friend of mine. So my blessings go out to his family and prayers. I just need to switch gears to this April Fool's Day that we celebrated last Thursday. And we had the Untalent Show fundraiser via Zoom. And first of all, I would imagine that all of you who attended and participated have to agree it was fun. Secondly, our goal was to raise $25,000, and the final numbers are still being tallied, but it looks like we raised about $37,000 to benefit the Denver Rotary Club Foundation. And there were also two donors who contributed $10,000 and $5,000 in matching challenge funds. And although the program was billed as an Untalent Show, it was a surprise to see the passion that our members have outside of Rotary to reveal the talent that we watched during the show. We had a variety of singing, piano playing, yo-yo and napkin tricks, unusual websites, plus there were auction items including amazing artwork, stunning photography, and food offerings, along with trivia questions. But wait, there's more. If you missed attending the show, you're still able to view the show via a link that'll be available in the meeting recap that'll be sent after today's program. And then there's also a link in that recap that'll, that'll have timestamps of the video, so you can scroll through the video depending on what you want to watch. And remember to turn up the volume for the music. Thanks to the amazing work of Jill, Debbie, and Lauren to pull this together in this short span of 3 weeks. Also, thank you for the talent, Pam, Troy, Ian, Jim, Doug, and Matt, and for the wonderful artwork, auction offerings by Jean, and the magnificent photographs by Todd, and Nicolene and Debbie for wine and cheese and pizza and beer offerings. Thanks also to Jack and Harriet for the inspiring opening and closing toast for the night. And finally, thank you to all of those who donated and to the two donors who contributed the $10,000 and $5,000 challenge funds. Back to you, Debbie.
Thank you. It was quite a night. So I see, Jill, you've got your hand raised. Is that because you're clapping or you have something else you're just clapping? All right, great. It was really an amazing evening, and it was our first time trying something like this. So we'll build upon that, see if it makes sense to do it again. And again, well said, Carter, on all of that. Next up is Todd Bacon for our Scholastic Art Awards 2021 grantee update. Todd is our Scholastic Art Awards chair and is a professional photographer. So Todd.
Well, I like that title there, Debbie. Thank you very much. The Rotary Club of Denver is in its 38th year of supporting the Scholastic Art Awards of Colorado. I think that's something we can all be proud of. I'd like to take you back a little over a year ago when COVID restrictions suddenly came into place. The volunteers had just finished hanging the art exhibition at the History Colorado Center at the end of February. The museum abruptly closed its doors on March 13th. We had our big awards scheduled for the next day, the 14th. And of course, the Rotary annual luncheon was scheduled for the 26th, and that had to be canceled. But I think the worst thing that happened during the last spring was that the student art was locked up inside the museum for 9 weeks. That meant that nobody could see the results of all the hard work by the students, by their family members, the teachers, and by the volunteers that put together the show. To me, that was the biggest tragedy. Then abruptly on March 13th, or May 13th rather, we got a curt message from the museum that we had 2 days to take the show down and get all the art removed from the building. Well, of course, in those days, schools were closed, teachers weren't teaching in person. The museum would not allow teachers to come in the building. Family members couldn't come in the building. But luckily, we had a board member who has a framing shop and had a little extra warehouse space, so we were able to get the work out and get it distributed from there. So let's fast forward now to 2021. The traditional judging had to be done virtually. We had no experience with that. We had no blueprint on how to do it. Nevertheless, we figured it out, and we had 46 volunteer judges who put in over 150 hours of work judging the students' artwork. We had no physical exhibition this year, so we had a challenge of how do we present the student art, and came up with the idea of a virtual art gallery, about which you're going to see quite a bit more momentarily. Everything virtually had to be redone again this year. Nevertheless, I think we had a successful year. We mailed to over 2,300 schools across the state with information packets. We had 2,281 pieces of artwork submitted by students. There were 243 teachers who were involved this year. We awarded 220 gold keys, which is the first place award, and the gold key winners go on to compete nationally. And at the national awards in New York City, we had 12 gold key winners from Colorado, and we had 25 silver keys for second place from Colorado. So a really strong year, I think, for Colorado, in spite of all the challenges that we had. So at this point, it's my great pleasure to introduce Miranda Ziegler to all of you. Miranda is a board member with Scholastics. She started with Scholastics in New Mexico 10 years ago, moved to Colorado 8 years ago, and with the Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, where she immediately jumped in to help us in Colorado. She's now a resource teacher with Jefferson County Public Schools and is involved with training and leading educators to incorporate work-based learning into the classrooms. She creates opportunities such as job shadowing, mentorships, and internships. And with this background, Miranda saw an opportunity to involve students in our attempt to create a virtual gallery. Miranda is joining us today to show us the results. Miranda, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Todd, for that introduction. And I'm thrilled to be here and share the gallery with all of you guys. I'm so excited to share it with you, but you will also be able to navigate on your own. It will be online, and I will go ahead in the chat. I'm not going to do it now, but afterwards I'll put the link in there so you can go and navigate and check it out. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And as I share my screen, with the gallery and how to navigate it, I'll talk a little bit about the process as well and what we were able to accomplish. So the gallery page is actually going to be routed through our homepage. So it's the Colorado Art Awards website. And there'll be a banner image that you can click on. You can see how it turns to blue when you click on it. Once you click on that, it'll navigate to our page with the gallery and program. The gallery is only one component of what we completed. We do have an awards program that is typically printed out. We printed it out and mailed it to all the awardees in the schools, and they received pins on behalf of Scholastics to indicate their gold key or silver key awards. So we have the program here, including scholarships and special awards on the website, and then all the film and video awards are also on here. It's a YouTube channel, so you can go and enjoy those with your family and friends and have some popcorn and enjoy those short films. Once you click on this image right here, you can see this is just a visual of the gallery, and then there's a guest book to submit, and we are tracking zip codes. We're going to see who's going to be able to join us on the website and the gallery, so we can make sure we're doing our due diligence of access and equity for all students throughout the entire state of Colorado. So when you click on this, it'll navigate you to a virtual gallery, and I'm going to make this a little wider because it seems like, oh my gosh, I'm spinning right now, but this is virtual reality at its finest. And when you join in, you'll see our logo down here at the bottom of the page. There is some information as far as the virtual gallery, labels, and a guest book as well. So we've tried to make sure that that guest book is included in both the website and the gallery. But when you come up here, you're going to be able to use your mouse. You can see the arrow that I'm clicking on, and you can navigate through here. And you'll see red dots that guide you through the gallery. So you can click on that red dot right there, and it will navigate you to the first, the special thanks. And then you can see that there's other dots as you move your mouse around. The amazing thing with this gallery is that you're able to see the artwork, and the red dots will help navigate through the space. You can see the artwork individually. These are our American Vision nominees. And then if I turn this way, you'll be able to see, I could actually move to another room. Now, all of this amazing work, look at this space right here. Absolutely gorgeous. This was created by a 16-year-old student in the Front Range. Super talented individuals. We want to lead by example. We want students to be a part of this in the future. And we're so thrilled that Rotary could be able to see and support our efforts to give students these options. We've had other students as well be a part of this project, and they've helped to label the artwork, to get the information out on social media and to share it and make sure that people know about this amazing gallery and to see the artwork. So I will go ahead and wrap up by saying we did have support with Red Rocks Community College and faculty. These students have met every Saturday with us to go over the work and have put in over 100 hours in the past 2 months alone to make this happen. So they've worked very, very hard to accomplish such an amazing, beautiful feat here. Let's look at one more piece of artwork there. It's a 3D piece of artwork, so it's a little difficult when it's 2D, but we've tried to do its due diligence. So I will go ahead and say, you know, if you can, take the time to go look at the gallery. We'd love to have your comments and feedbacks for the families and students, and we'll share that online. And if you have any questions, of course, in chat, you are more than welcome to put it there as well.
Thank you very much, Miranda. I'm blown away by it that a 16-year-old could do that with the help of a couple of professors from Red Rocks Community College. And also thank you for your leadership in guiding the whole process and coming up with these ideas. It's really, really remarkable. At this point, I'd like to turn the session over to Carter again to do a check presentation.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Miranda. You know, this is always a highlight of the Rotary year when we're able to view these in person. So certainly this presentation this year, it's wonderful that we can do this, and hopefully we'll be able to be back in person next year. But, you know, the mission of the Denver Rotary Club Foundation is to participate jointly with the Denver Rotary Club to make a positive impact in our community through the grants that we make each year. And our grants emphasize the commitment and the importance and the value of youth and education. I understand that the Scholastic Arts really originated in the basement of the May Company in 1947. It's just truly amazing. And those of you from Denver know where the May Company was downtown. I also understand that our support led to the scholarship offers to students of over $34,000 from institutions of higher learning and other nonprofit collaborators last year. So we're very proud to see the impact that it makes beyond the artwork as to those students who are now pursuing other educational opportunities, truly. So on behalf of the Denver Rotary Club Foundation, I am pleased to present our grant check in the amount of $6,500 to Miranda, and we certainly wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much for believing in the youth of Colorado. Your support gives them a voice, which you saw with the virtual gallery. Your encouragement leads them not only to become artists, but leaders, visionaries, problem solvers, and entrepreneurs. Thanks again. Pam Stark.
Pam is the executive director, longtime volunteer, fearless leader for Scholastics. And Pam, none of this would happen without your experience and guidance over the years. So thank you very much. And I think that's it for us. Back to you, Debbie.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Thank you. It's great to have you here. And that was a fun presentation. I remember Scholastic Arts. It's a wonderful event. So hopefully we'll get back to normal soon. With that, I need to move us to the program introduction. So Peg Johnston is doing our program introduction today. Peg is our programs committee co-chair. She's also retired principal of Business Acquisitions Ltd. So Peg.
Yes, I am very excited today to be introducing our speaker. I think he's going to be you'll have lots of questions, I'm sure. Edaan Getzel was the co-founder and the COO of an AI, artificial intelligence startup company in Shanghai, China. He spent 4 years in Shanghai working with AI in the education and marketing sectors. And he will talk about his firsthand experience running a business and living in China. And talking with him this morning, I realized he just came back in November of 2019 before the pandemic and said, you know, maybe he would have been better off staying there. Interesting, thinking about what's happening in the US. But I'm excited to hear what you have to say, Edaan. So welcome.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak to everybody today. First of all, can everybody see my screen? It should be like a big, hopefully menacing look at
Yep.
called
Well,
technological
perfect.
control. Excellent. Okay, so before I get started, I think that I found this image before when I was just reading an article or something like that. This wasn't me, but I thought that this was very interesting in the way that China was using technology to kind of mitigate a lot of the stuff around coronavirus when they started back in 2019. What you can see there, if you can't tell, is a long list of people, a lot of people wearing masks, and this is kind of put at the border between two provinces in China. If you'll see at the top, there is the drone that's flying overhead and a QR code. I think many of us now know what QR codes are, but they're ubiquitous in China. And what they were doing was they were using that drone QR codes, the existing apps that they're using for messaging in China, to basically dictate who can pass and who can't pass based upon AI and kind of algorithms that they were using to determine if somebody was in contact with somebody with coronavirus. So I really thought that this was interesting. I think this is a nice kind of epitome of what China is trying to do. If I continue here, just a little bit about my background. Again, I was the co-founder of an AI-based company in Shanghai. The company went up, it plateaued, and then it died like many companies did. It was great. Don't have any regrets. Learned a lot. I moved back here in Denver right as coronavirus was kicking off. So I left then. The other thing I think is important as I try to help frame the discussion or frame what I want to be talking about here today is that I do have a master's degree with a focus on Chinese innovation. I was always really fascinated with the way that China looks at itself and sees itself within the context of the world. So just a little bit about my background. So there's a technology and kind of a social sciences background that I'm going to bring to this. The first section that I really wanted to talk to and discuss here was I wanted to give you a little bit of background about how China's relationship, how China views itself and its relationship to technology. And so if we continue here, I think it's really, really, really important that we don't necessarily understand as much here in the West, but I think it's important to see how China views itself. And this is a map of China, and the characters in the middle is how China refers to itself. It's Zhongguo, and Zhongguo means Middle Kingdom. We often think about China's rise, but in China, they view themselves not necessarily on the rise, but they're basically going back to where they've always been and where they've traditionally been. They view themselves as the Middle Kingdom, as the dominant kingdom. In the past 200 years, from about the 1800s until about 2000, that was the down point of Chinese power. It wasn't like they're ascending, it's they're going back to their rightful place as a powerful nation in the world. And I think that's really, really important in terms of how they look at Taiwan, how they look at what's happening in Hong Kong, how they look at what's happening in Xinjiang, how they look at what's happening in Tibet. China views itself as the Middle Kingdom, and all the other kingdoms around it are other kingdoms, but they're the middle and kind of central one. I think it's really important to view that as we try to understand what they're trying to do within the rest of the world. This is Xi Jinping. He's the premier. He's the leader of China. The Communist Party of China rules with a relatively iron fist. It's not as necessarily totalitarian. It's not as kind of brutal and overt as it once was, but it is the dominant entity in China. It dominates the public sector. It dominates civil society. It dominates many things within the country. I think it's really important. Every 5 years, they're a Communist Party. They put out a 5-year kind of plan with these initiatives. And I think that in the last one, he put out 4 concepts that he wanted to push for. The first one was to comprehensively build a moderately prosperous society. The second one was to comprehensively deepen reform, comprehensively govern the nation according to law, and more importantly, and I think this is important, is to comprehensively govern the party. And that has been interpreted through a variety of places, is to basically like indoctrinate the primacy of the CCP within Chinese society. The CCP will stay in control. The CCP will dominate, will kind of control how China moves forward, and the CCP is in charge. There's no kind of questions about that, and they're not necessarily open for debate or change in that realm. I think that's also really, really important to think about and consider as we move forward, as we think about technology and data in China. And it actually is, I think, very useful to help understand China's motivations when they think about how they're dealing with the world outside of China as well. Another quick point that I wanted to make sure that everyone we're on the same page with is that China generates a lot of data. They've got cell phone penetration that's greater than anything that we have here in the US. There's this graph over here. What I like in the upper right, in the corner, shows that there's about 1.4 billion people in China. And of those 1.4 billion people, 99% of them are online in some form. Everybody over there has a cell phone. The cell phone is basically more ubiquitous even than it is here. Some basic statistics that I really enjoy looking at is that every day, the average Chinese, so like 1.4 billion people, are online for almost 6 hours a day. Of those 6 hours a day, they spend 3 hours and 10 minutes on their phone. And of that, they spend about 2 hours and 12 minutes using social media. As many of you probably know, social media like Facebook and Instagram is blocked, and Google is blocked in China. They have their own versions, which I'll touch upon a little bit later here. But I think what's important about that is to understand that mobile data versus desktop data generates even more data. Mobile experiences versus desktop experiences generate even more data And because everybody's online with their phone, China generates a ton of data, far more than we really do here in the United States. They use a lot of this data. It's not overt, but there's kind of, you can infer that they use a lot of this data for a variety of different things. I was doing some research, I don't know, about 6 months ago or a year ago or something like that, and I came across this quote, which I felt was kind of terrifying. But basically, China's using a lot of this data to functionally monitor its citizens. It's not necessarily, maybe you could definitely argue that it's a surveillance state. And what they're doing is that they're making it very, very convenient, and they're making it very, very necessary to use your cell phone and these apps all the time in order for the government to basically monitor what you're doing. If you're not doing anything wrong, it doesn't really matter, there's no big deal. But if you are doing something that the government doesn't like, or you're doing something that the government doesn't agree with, or if you're doing something that challenges the Communist Party of China, they know it, they've got a record of it, and they can act on it very, very quickly. This was actually, again, from an article that I found, this was a quote and actually just a menacing image. But basically in Xinjiang, which is where I think maybe, hopefully some of you understand the problem that's happening with the Uyghurs, in the way that the Chinese government is dealing with the Uyghurs. And so this is in reference to this. In Xinjiang, we're using big data and AI to fight terrorists. We've intercepted 1,200 terror organizations when still planning an attack. We use technology to identify and locate activities of terrorists, including a smart city system. We have a face recognition system for all terrorists, and there is a database. I think what's maybe another area to understand is that data, facial recognition software is functionally data. And so what they're able to do is they're able to really understand who you are, map a face to an ID, to a phone, and then they can really track and make sure that they know what everybody's doing and when they're doing it. I'll move on here really quickly. So I think that the next section that I wanted to get into was really understanding China's technology ecosystem. And then this will kind of dovetail into how this is going to work. But China is basically, it's a little bit different now, but largely China's controlled, at least traditionally, by 3 companies, and they're called BAT. There's a newcomer on the scene. And BAT stands for Baidu, which is this one over here to the right. Baidu is functionally the equivalent of Google in China. It's largely a search company. Baidu is not really at the same level. They've got a market capitalization of about 39 billion. There's a new player in the market. There's a couple of new ones, but the new one that probably many people know is a company called ByteDance. You probably don't know ByteDance, but you probably heard of TikTok. And so ByteDance and TikTok is this new company that's kind of coming on the scene. Again, it's not anywhere near, it's not even a publicly traded company, so it's not anywhere near right now Baidu or Alibaba or Tencent. But it is one of these newcomers that people need to be aware of because they have such a direct to consumer. They have a lot of users that are on the account. The two companies, that it's not really BAT, it's really AT. And you've got this kind of Hatfield and McCoy, and you've got this rivalry between Alibaba, which I think many people know, which is functionally the equivalent of Amazon, and Tencent. And what Tencent is probably this hidden giant that I might argue is more important or more powerful or more influential within China than even Alibaba is. And they're basically a company that has a variety of different businesses that they're in. But largely the ones that they're going to work in are kind of digital communication, things like messaging apps. So if you're to think about it, they're largely similar to more like Facebook. And they also have a big kind of gaming side as well. Realistically, what happens is that Alibaba and Tencent are constantly at war with each other. They're constantly fighting each other in a variety of different verticals and a variety of different sectors online. And so Alibaba might be the market leader number 1, and then Tencent has another property or another business that's number 2. Or maybe Tencent is number 1 and Alibaba is number 2. And they're constantly jockeying back and forth, and they're always fighting with each other in order to see like who's number 1 within China. So it's Pepsi or Coke, but on a much larger, much more technological scale. I'm going to focus specifically on one of the applications that the Tencent company has, and that application is called Wechat. And maybe some of you know it, maybe some of you don't know it, but Wechat is really this like operating system, and it's this one app that rules basically all of your daily life in China, which I'll get into a little bit more later. In the United States, we have all of these other applications that we use. If you look over there on the right, if you want to do messaging, you might use WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or iMessage or anything else. If you want to do social networking, you might use Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. The thing that we're really, really far behind is the area of mobile payments. So you might use Venmo, or you might use PayPal or Apple Wallet or something like that. If you wanted to do traveling, if you wanted to book travel or anything like that, you might use Airbnb or booking.com. If you wanted to do a lot of reviews or shopping. And we have all of these different apps on our phone and all these different places where we go to access all of that. In China, you can access all of this kind of stuff via WeChat. And so the way that I tend to think of WeChat is not so much as an app, but it's really more of like an operating system. And so as an operating system, it has all of these other little apps that live on top of it. And I would actually argue that Apple's biggest competitor in China is not Google, because number one, Google is blocked, but really Apple's biggest competition in China is WeChat. If you were to have gone to me in China when they said, Edaan, you can either have your iPhone and no WeChat, or some generic Chinese, not even generic, you can have a Huawei phone with WeChat on it, and you can only choose one or the other. There's no question that I would have chosen the app with WeChat on it, or the phone with WeChat on it. I would have I would have begrudgingly but quickly thrown out my iPhone because in order to communicate in China, in order to have access to your basic daily life, you need to have this app called WeChat. And WeChat does generate a lot of different data, and it generates a lot of understanding about its users, and it uses that data to kind of make your life much more convenient and easy to go about your daily activities. And so this is my kind of core argument, and I don't know that I made it as clearly as I would have hoped. But my core argument about China is that the Communist Party blesses a few of these technology giants, largely Alibaba and Tencent, who operate under the assumption that the government says, we will allow you to operate. If you don't follow what we say, we're going to pull the plug and we're going to destroy your business. And so the CCP blesses a few technology giants to make life more convenient for China's 1.4 billion internet users. The companies use AI and a lot of the data that it generates to collect, that they collect to better serve, understand, and monitor all of these users. The end result is that the people get convenience. Your life is really, really easy. You can do basically anything that you want via your cell phone. These companies generate a lot of money and they have really huge market capitalizations. And I think more importantly, that the government uses all of this data to really control and understand and follow and track people's daily lives. And this is kind of the core thesis that I have regarding how China interacts with technology and interacts with people on a day-to-day, in their day-to-day lives. I will continue now here. So basically I was gonna show you and demonstrate you like a typical morning for me in Shanghai. And what I'm trying to do here is emphasize and show how the technology really plays a part into every single thing that I do, and to see how much data that they're collecting from me. So generally I would wake up 6:45 in the morning. This is a shot out of my window in Shanghai. And I might read, I would open up WeChat like I did every morning, and I might read the news. When I would open up those links in WeChat, WeChat then knows the types of articles that I'm reading, the content that I like, the perspective of the different articles that I like. But what WeChat is really doing is they have the ability to collect all of this information to understand like what I'm interested in and what I'm kind of getting information about. After that, I might leave the house. This was not a picture that was directly outside my house. But if you'll notice when you go in China, there are cameras on many street corners everywhere, kind of like you see up here at the top. What they're doing there is they're monitoring everything. They've got really, really advanced facial recognition technology and facial recognition software. And what that means is that they basically know and they can track who you are and where you go every day. And you're walking by these cameras at every intersection, so it's not like you can just disappear off the side. These cameras are everywhere and they're constantly watching you. After I might go across the street, I need to decide how I was going to get to work. There's a variety of different ways that I could do it. If I wanted to take one of these rental bikes, like you're seeing around Denver now, these things are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. It's called Mobike. If I wanted to rent one of those bikes, I could open up WeChat and I could scan the QR code on the bike, and then I could go and I could take off with it. The idea there, again, WeChat understands when I'm scanning my bike, what bike I'm getting on, where I'm parking it, because I have to close it off. And so they can kind of track really well how I would go about and where I was going. Another option might be that I would take the subway. And so if I decided I was going to take the subway, not all the cities, but some of the cities allow you to pay for your subway token using a QR code. And so rather than putting in a ticket or getting like a subway card, you would just scan the QR code. It would deduct the money directly from your WeChat or Alibaba wallets. It's kind of like your digital bank account. It would directly take the money out there. And then when you leave the subway system as well, you have to scan as well. So again, WeChat knows when I get on the subway, when I get off the subway, where I'm going, where I'm not going. And that's how they can also track that as well. The last way that I might go to work is I might walk. I might just say like, you know what, it's a nice day, I'm gonna walk to work. If I were to walk by, you don't see a lot of them in Shanghai, especially where I was living, but you might walk by a homeless guy who's panhandling for money, who's asking for money. In China, they'll still take cash, but many of these homeless people who are begging, they would often have one of these lanyards with a QR code on it, like this guy has here. And he would just ask you to transfer him money into his WeChat wallet. The implication being that even people who are homeless have their own cell phone and have their own WeChat accounts, so that they can then collect money from people who go by. And you can pay people using that. And again, the implication here would be that they would know who I'm sending money to. So WeChat would know that like I stopped here and I sent money to this particular guy. Next, I might go near my office, I might buy coffee. If you see over here on the red square, you can see that that's how I would actually order my coffee. So I would scan that QR code and I would order my coffee by scanning that QR code. I would input what I wanted, and then I would actually pay directly by in that app as well. So now what WeChat is beginning to understand, they understand the places that I go to get my coffee. They understand the types of things that I order, when to get coffee, and then they understand how much this is going to cost. So again, this is more data that they can use to collect and understand who I am and my habits and where I'm going. This was something that I saw right as I left, and this wasn't directly across the street from my office, but I think that this is one of the most interesting and kind of terrifying things that I saw when I was there. What you have here is basically they installed these towers in a couple of really busy intersections. And what these towers do is they kind of look at your face. It kind of reminded me of something out of The Lord of the Rings. And what these towers do is they're looking at people's faces. And what they can do is if you're jaywalking or if you're crossing the street when you're not supposed to be crossing the street, they can take a picture of your face, and then they can map that picture of your face to your WeChat account, and more importantly, to your WeChat wallet. So if you walk across the street when you're not supposed to, they can take a picture of your face and they can deduct the fine from your WeChat wallet before you even get across the street. There were some famous campaigns when they first instituted a lot of this facial recognition, where people would go in, they would jaywalk across the street, which was a problem 10 years ago in China. It's not so much a problem anymore, but they would do a name and shame campaign, where basically if you walked across the street when you weren't supposed to be doing something, they would take a picture of your face and they could put it up on a billboard, and they would say, this person jaywalked and is walking across the street. And they would shame you into not jaywalking anymore over there. So this was something that I thought was really interesting. They're monitoring basically what people are doing at all times. If they need to deduct, fine, track you, whatever they got to do, they've got the ability to integrate all of that data and to use a lot of this AI to understand who you are and to basically put a stop to any kind of foul behavior like jaywalking. This is me, this is my team at the beginning when we started out. When I would arrive at the office, I would use my WeChat QR code. I would use a WeChat ID. I would scan my QR code and that would actually let me get into my office. So that was tied there. So they know where my WeChat now knows where my office is when I get in there, my habits there. After that, I might go, and for my business, I might need to write a couple of articles or create content. I would use WeChat as my distribution platform. And so I would go in there and I would write articles. And so now WeChat, and in order to get in there, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place here. In order to get in there, I would need my WeChat ID to log into my content, to my business platform. And in order to do that, they would understand who's writing articles, when I'm writing articles, the type of articles that I'm writing as well. So not only do they know what I'm reading when I woke up in the morning, but they also know what I'm writing and what I'm thinking about going forward. And that's how I would do that. Maybe after that, I would have a project call. Some people still use a lot of cell phone numbers, but a lot of my calls were actually done directly in Wechat. It's very similar to what we do in WhatsApp. And so I might have a project call. It's not, there's a joke. Everybody kind of knows it's an open secret that they kind of listen into your phone calls. And so they're monitoring and they're running a lot of AI and kind of voice recognition algorithms on there to probably understand what people are talking about and to kind of track and either like cut the line on things that you're not supposed to be talking about. The other thing that's really interesting about it is a lot of business isn't done via email. A lot of business is done directly in Wechat. And so I might have a document that I needed to send as an attachment, where I would send here an email. Over there, I would just go ahead and I would just drop it into the chat. The idea being that when I drop it into chat, like I have here on the right, they could then read the documents and understand the type of information that I'm sending and who I'm sending it to. After this, I might go, let's say I've got a client meeting. I would have a client meeting. Again, I would get on the subway if I wanted to. I would scan the QR code. The other thing that I would do is I might do something like Uber. It's called Didi. And I could hail a ride using Didi directly in the Wechat app. So again, they know where I'm going, who I'm going with, all of that other kind of information that they're collecting as a result of me scanning that or opening that application within the Wechat environment. When I got to the client meetings, I don't know if people have been to China or not, but and I don't read Chinese very well at all. You can't find buildings. They're kind of tucked behind corners. And so I might get to a meeting and be like, I need to find somebody that I can talk to. I don't know exactly where to find them. It's really busy. There's all these people. They've got this really convenient feature called real-time location. What this real-time location allows you to do is see where you are and the person you're trying to match with is, and it kind of points you in the right direction. Again, the implication here, Wechat knows who I'm trying to match with, exactly where I am using GPS, and they can track where I am and where I'm going. And then maybe at the end after this, it's 12 o'clock and it's lunchtime. I can order kind of like Uber Eats. It's called Meituan. I could go into Meituan. I could figure out what I wanted to order. I could buy it directly in the account. Maybe I was buying with friends. I could say, hey, this is what I wanted to eat for lunch. And I would send it to my friend Wiki, and they would then know what I'm eating, my preferences for what I'm eating, and then who I'm actually eating lunch with. And when I say they, Wechat would know all of that information. So that is a typical morning for me in China, and how kind of Wechat is ubiquitous. Hopefully that demonstrated a lot of the information a lot of the data that I was presenting, or I was giving to them voluntarily. It was very, very convenient. It was very easy. And then hopefully it gives you an idea on how the Chinese government might be using that data, or at least a theory on how they might be using that data. So that's all I've got. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Edaan. This is Debbie, and we do have a couple of questions that have been queued up. So I'll start with the first. It ended up being true that there was the tracking information embedded in US user applications. Why do you feel that got little attention, and how may that information be used by bad actors in China?
I think at least in the US, I don't know that specific case, but I think one of the things in the US is we live kind of blissfully, we're like blissfully ignorant of the amount of data that we generate ourselves. We have this assumption that like nobody's going to do anything bad with it. But the idea that we aren't generating, maybe not the volume, but at least a huge amount of data ourselves is kind of, well, we're just living, it's just the choice that we've decided to make. How China might use it is no different than how Google or Facebook or anyone else is using it as well. I think the difference between how China uses it is basically the scale and the kind of end goal, or the kind of explicit end goal. I think that Facebook and Google are doing very, very similar things around data collection and data analysis. And if somebody wanted to get in there, if somebody hacked into Google or Facebook or any of those, they could get also very kind of important data as well. I guess I don't know that I have a solution other than it's more of like an awareness, like just helping people to hopefully understand that you are generating all this data and somebody out there knows it, somebody out there is looking at it, and you just hope that that person that's looking at it has your best interests in mind. It wasn't a very satisfactory answer or fulfilling answer, but that's what I would say on that.
Very good. We do have some questions that are queuing up too. So let me go through these. What did your
Yeah.
business do?
Yeah, so we basically had a company that did AI chatbots. And so initially we started out by trying to scale English language learning by blending like an AI robot with a live teacher to basically make one-on-one interactions more scalable. We ran into a variety of different problems, including creating a lot of the content, creating a lot of the different, basically creating a good user experience was really, really hard. Setting the right expectations, like do people want to talk to a robot? And so we experimented with making it chatbot led and then teacher supported, and then we switched it around to being teacher supported, chatbot led. And what we ended up finding was that we ran out of money. We didn't have the money or the intelligence, to be honest, to figure out how to build that user experience well. But in the process of building out a lot of those different tools, what we ended up doing was we ended up taking it around to some people, large Fortune 100 companies. So we worked with companies like Visa, Budweiser, MetLife, to basically use a lot of that same know-how for not necessarily to build out a curriculum, but basically how to work in the advertising space. And so what they were trying to do was trying to collect more information about their users so that they could deliver better products and services and just collect more user information. And we used a lot of the AI and the same technologies that we did. We reskinned it and we reapplied it to them. We were able to survive for about 4 years using that kind of model, but at the end of the day, I couldn't sell enough for a variety of reasons, but we couldn't sell enough to basically stay in the market and stay afloat.
Okay. Is there any conversation in China about the trade-offs involved for all this convenience, or is it more or less seen as a sacrifice worth making?
I think it's a really interesting question. I think that I was actually, when I was there, and maybe there's other people here who had different experiences, at least in my experience, I was shocked at the kind of acknowledgement and like blasé attitude to, I'm not doing anything wrong, like what do I care? I think that, and that came from not only like local Chinese, but a lot of people who had lived overseas for a long, long time, who had gone to school in the US, who had gotten master's degrees or PhDs in the US or Europe or elsewhere. I think it's very much like a cultural thing where people, I think that many people were either not aware of it, and the ones who were aware of it, most of them, in my experience, had a very blasé, like, yep, I'm not doing anything wrong. I know that this is what I'm giving up, but I don't really care. And as long as I'm not doing anything wrong, like it doesn't affect me. And I don't know if that's good or bad, and I'm sure that I'm overgeneralizing, but there are a couple of people that I know that were much more kind of privacy oriented and maybe distrustful of how their data was being used. But most of the people either didn't know, or didn't care.
All right. Here's a comment question. This is very scary. What conclusions do you draw from all of this regarding how the US should deal with China and also domestically in the US?
So again, I don't know. We're doing the same things, maybe not to the scale and maybe not as obvious, but we're doing the same things. Again, I think that the big takeaway would be just largely more awareness. I'm not saying that you have to change your data. I'm not saying that you have to change the way that you're using the internet. I think that it's important to just be aware that like your data is being collected, whether you really want to or not. And so if you don't want it to be, then you either need to be willing to sacrifice, you need to change some habits from your side. I think that China is a little bit different. I don't know that China's using it for, well, I don't know. I don't get the sense that that the government is using a lot of this data for like aggressive purposes, so much as they're using it for kind of maintaining existing control. I know that there's been a lot of saber rattling recently between China and Taiwan. There's always saber rattling between China and Taiwan. I would say, like, be careful. If you are worried about it, don't use Chinese apps. Don't use TikTok. Don't use, and that's one of the problems why Chinese apps haven't really like exploded outside of China. It's because the user experience is just completely different, and it's a completely different. That's a complete other topic. But I would say make sure that don't use a lot of the Chinese apps, because implicit in you using those apps is the idea that if the Chinese government wanted access to that data, they could just take it. There isn't really like TikTok, for example, could say all they wanted, like, now our servers are in Singapore. You don't have to worry about it as an international. You don't have to worry about it as an international person. But if China wanted that, I would bet on the Chinese government getting access to that data if they really wanted it. So if you're scared about China having that information, don't use Chinese apps, and get a VPN, I'd say.
There's some comments about never thinking about jaywalking the same, and also the movie The Social Dilemma, which is really worth watching. So
yeah,
I do have a couple more questions if you can
sure.
stay on.
Yeah.
It seems that due to China's lack of privacy laws and massive data harvesting, there is no stopping their growing influence and dominance over technology. Is there any way US can compete with China's technological advancement?
You know, I don't know. I think it's a really hard question. It's a great question. I think one of the things that was really important in that question, and I don't know that I'm going to answer it. One of the things that's really important in that question is that it used to be viewed that China just ripped off American technology. And there is still that perception out there. Like, China's technology is as good and in many ways far superior to what we're doing. I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to be able to move a lot faster. I'm just looking at the company that I'm working in right now. WeChat moves as fast. WeChat has 1 billion users on it every month. WeChat moves as fast as the company that I'm working with now. We need to move faster, as far as I know. And I know that our technology companies move fast in general, but China just like grows by leaps and bounds fast. I mean, they just move so much faster than we do. I think there's also, just in general, like culturally, there's less hesitancy towards adopting new technology. Grandparents are on WeChat all the time. They send money all the time. It's a cultural thing where they just seem to be open to more technology. I don't know if that's good or bad. It just is kind of what it is. And when everybody's kind of aligned towards moving forward, they seem to be able to just move faster. There's less pushback.
Here's another one. When I was younger and dumber and first went to China, I did internet searches on terms like Tiananmen, and I was either blocked or got info totally omitting the massacre event. What happens today if you search for terms that offend the CCP?
Well, first of all, it gets blocked. Second of all, don't bring it up. Third of all, there's there's the 3 forbidden T's. It's Tibet, Tiananmen, and Taiwan. So if you want to stay out of trouble with people, don't mention those things. You know, part of the other thing is, like, I was a foreigner. As a foreigner, like, they don't necessarily like get you in trouble. They just say leave. Like, you're not welcome to come back. So that's part of it. I think now if you try to type that in now, it just gets blocked. Like, it just says no results found. So if you have a VPN is basically a way to tunnel under this great firewall. If you have a VPN, you can do some of those searches, but they're actually tightening a lot of the VPN traffic as well. So they're not as effective as they used to be. So I've been told. I haven't been there in about 1.5 years, but they're tightening even that sort of control. Whereas if you look at the Chinese internet now, it's not necessarily like a global internet, but it's more like an intranet, a traditional one where it like works really, really well within China. And then if you want to get traffic outside of the Chinese firewall, it'll slow down. So you can't find it. It's what I'll say.
All right, 2 more questions. Is there much crime in China?
No, no. I think it's like an Asian thing, like Asia in general. But you know, I never had any problems with anything. I had friends, female friends, and they would have no problem getting into an Uber late at night. They'd have no problem walking home by themselves at night. It's not to say that like there isn't like petty crime, but it's not, you know, it doesn't feel, at least in Shanghai where I was, like, it doesn't feel like you're really ever feel in danger.
Because they always know where you are.
They know where you are, and there's, you know, there's a lot of other things. There's fewer. They have many other problems, but they don't share many of the afflictions that we have here in the U.S.
All right,
they got other problems. Yeah.
Yeah. Last question. I understand that China is exporting this technology. If yes, how extensive and how effectively are other countries using it?
So I'm not 100% sure on it, but I've read some stuff around what they're doing in Africa, and they're basically exporting a lot of this kind of 5G kind of surveillance technology. And I think it's important to understand there's a slight but important distinction. They're exporting a lot of the infrastructure. So it's basically the 5G towers and like the cell towers. And they're giving a lot of that stuff to Africa, to these despots who, and the idea being that if you sit on the cell phone towers, you can always just like pluck the information and you can harvest the data from the tower rather than having to go into the phone. So as far as I know, they're exporting a lot of that to these kind of places in Africa that either want to monitor their citizens or they just want a better deal. As far as I know, like Huawei is cheaper, and the Chinese government subsidizes a lot of that. The implication being that like if you install Huawei towers as well, the Chinese government can start to monitor. They've been accusing Microsoft and the US of the exact same thing as well. So I don't want to say that it's not, they're being completely like one-sided with it, but the implication being that if you install Huawei towers, there's going to be a backdoor in there that the Chinese government can read or gather a lot of that information to monitor what else is happening. I don't necessarily have a lot of insight into that other than what I just shared, but I would say that they're not coy about their desire to want to understand what's happening. So yeah.
How fascinating. If you don't mind putting your email in the chat, I know it was in the end of your presentation. If folks have questions they want to reach out,
yeah, be happy
this,
to.
that would be great. To thank you for your time with us today and for sharing this, we will make a donation in your honor to Rotary International in Polio Now. It is Rotary International's goal to eradicate polio worldwide. With the Bill and Melinda Gates match, there will be 100 children inoculated in the world in your honor.
Thank you very much. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Next week's program will be hybrid. We will be part in person and part on Zoom. The program will be a mile high and worldwide, the importance of international trade to Denver and Colorado, with Karen Gerwitz, president of World Trade Center, as our speaker. Reservations for in-person were required, and we will be unable to accommodate walk-ins due to COVID. Please join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.